I gotta admit, I've been pretty critical of Apple in the past year. I think most of you would admit that, but Apple pretty much surprised me across the board with every announcement today. Yes, a lot of the leaks ended up being right, but the implementation kind of went above and beyond what I was expecting, so I just gotta hand it to them. Like, good job, Apple, seriously, for just across the board improving and upgrading so much of the Apple lineup and innovating simultaneously. I guess the real Apple sheep Drew is back? Let's begin. First off, what shocked me right out the gate was the regular iPhone 17. Same exact price as before, by the way, okay? So all of these upgrades are at no penalty to the overall cost. For one, it gets a ProMotion display, so 120 hertz out the box. I actually really expected them to do something to make it worse from the Pros, but it's genuinely the exact same display specifications as an iPhone 16 Pro, which just yesterday was selling for $1,000. This phone is $800. And yes, it can dynamically change all the way down to 1 hertz, and they even have an always on display with more brightness than before, so it's actually better than the 16 Pro, I guess, because at least in daylight it can peak out at 3000 nits now, which is amazing because I already thought 2000 nits was pretty good. And the new anti-reflective coating that people were hoping would come to the Pro iPhones came to the regular base iPhone 17, which now has 256 gigs by default. Usually when you get a storage hike like that, it comes with a price hike, but no, same price as before, great color options, and that I mentioned it's a battery boost. So with video playback, it's looking like close to a 5-hour battery increase, so definitely not like double the battery life of an iPhone 16, but a modest improvement along with an A19 chip. So of course, expect graphics and processing speed to be a little bit better, but probably the same memory. Of course, Apple never talks about RAM with their iPhones, but pretty much the same memory as before. But another decent surprise I was not expecting is faster wired charging. So of course, Apple never gives us the direct wattage, so we kind of have to extrapolate it ourselves, but they're saying now you can go from 0 to 80% in 20 minutes. Before, it took 30 minutes, but only when coupled with a 40-watt adapter. So I think that means even on the basic, cheapest iPhone 17, the fast charging speed now supports up to 40 watts. Before, it basically peaked out at 20 watts, so that's basically double the wattage acceptance, which is fantastic. And front-facing camera got a very noticeable upgrade in my opinion. It's a larger square sensor that allows you to take landscape shots without having to rotate your phone, which is going to be super useful. I took a lot of photos on my trip to Europe recently, and so many times we're trying to fit everybody in the shot, but you can't, and then you're trying to hold the phone sideways and try not to drop it. So that looks super useful. It's basically a center stage camera, so the phone will adjust based on how many people are in the frame, and I think that's just a very great quality of life feature. And oh, I even forgot to mention, it's a bigger display than the iPhone 16. So without increasing the footprint much at all, they just slimmed down the bezels and it looks a lot more like the iPhone 16 Pro. The exterior design is pretty much the same. The rear-facing cameras are 48 megapixel ultra-wide and a standard wide lens. They act like it's 5 or 6 lenses in your pocket because you can digitally zoom, but overall, just great upgrades across the board with no pricing penalty. So great job, Apple. Thank you. And I'm going to cover the event kind of out of order just to be different from them because I like to think different, but let's talk about the Pros for a second, because the really interesting thing to me comparing the 17 to the 17 Pro and Pro Max is it now means there is no display advantages to going with a Pro aside from the larger screen size, and that's what the sales data is really going to be interesting with this year. Essentially, the only advantage to getting a Pro now is better battery life, the bigger screen size option with the Pro Max, and camera upgrades. It's the same front-facing camera on the regular 17 and 17 Pro, so it's not even an exclusive there, but mainly the 17 Pro and Pro Max got that 48 megapixel telephoto. We all saw it coming from a mile away. Apparently, it's like a true 4x optical, but Apple claims it's 8x because you can pinch in on that 48 megapixel sensor, and they technically are like, well, you don't lose any resolution, so it's an optical zoom, right? They said it's like having 9 lenses on a single phone. Okay, I feel like they shouldn't be allowed to say that, but the Pros obviously have a much more radical design. They switched away from titanium, very bizarrely moved the millimeter wave antenna to the very top of the iPhone. I don't get it. Why does it have to be up there? It looks weird. It looks like the baby's got a little soft spot on its head. Makes me uncomfortable. I need to get used to it a little bit, but overall, the new verbiage that we need to learn for these new designs, where the camera bump now stretches across the whole back, which I called the visor design from the Pixel phones for many years. Apple's official term for it is the plateau. Apparently, moving a lot of the electronics and internals of the iPhone into that plateau allowed them to increase the inside battery capacity for both sizes. But yes, technically, the 17 Pro Max is the longest battery life ever on an iPhone. Not a big surprise, given it's supposed to be around 5,000 milliamp hours on the inside, plus a 19 Pro chip. It's got more like designated neural cores within the GPU, so yeah, gaming's better, processing power is better, and all that. But the real surprising, confusing decisions they made with the 17 Pros is, for the first time, I think ever, there is no black iPhone option. If you go with a Pro, you have to get either the new Cosmic Orange, Silver, or Deep Blue. I don't know what the sales data was showing, but I know a ton of people that always bought the black iPhone every year, and I understand why so many of them would be very upset for them not to introduce it on the Pro. Maybe they'll save it for a spring launch. I feel like it's just too obvious. You took away product red from us, Apple. Are you going to take away space black next? Kind of surprising, but I'm personally very grateful they moved away from titanium, and they explained exactly why. Wasn't a big surprise based on the invite image looking kind of like a thermal camera. They've officially added vapor chambers to the 17 Pros, which help dissipate heat throughout the aluminum enclosure. And again, to all of you titanium supporters, this is the biggest reason you shouldn't use titanium on a phone. They literally showcased in the event that the aluminum design allows for 20 times better thermal management than the titanium they were using in the 15 Pro and 16 Pro. So it is very hypocritical for them to like hype up titanium on all these billboards for years and then turn around and brag about how they removed it and now they've got aluminum. But aluminum is lighter, for one, and that's kind of important with these phones because technically, with the case of the 17 Pro Max, this is the thickest the iPhone has ever been. It's actually not the heaviest though, so that crown still goes to the 14 and 13 Pro Max. Back when Apple had stainless steel, those phones had a lot of weight to them. So while the 17 Pro Max is super thick, thicker than any iPhone before, thankfully, because it's aluminum, it's not the heaviest, which means it shouldn't feel that uncomfortable to use for extended periods. But throw a case on there and yeah, this is still going to be a little bit of a chunk fest. But don't worry, if you don't like thick, chunky iPhones, that's where the new kid on the block enters the picture. And for the first time in a long, long while, there's not a number attached to this iPhone, which is good because it'll make discontinuing it in a year much easier. Yes, as everyone was expecting, the iPhone Air is real. So unlike the aluminum switch on the 17 Pros, this still has titanium and it's polished. It's a very shiny chassis, and almost all of the leaks surrounding the Air ended up being correct. So yes, there's only one camera. That means no ultra wide, no macro photography. There's no designated telephoto lens. Apple acts like there is because you can crop in on the 48 megapixel sensor, but it's still just technically a digital zoom. And my big concern with the iPhone Air came down to the battery life, because obviously it's physically not able to fit that big of a capacity on the inside, given it's the thinnest iPhone ever at 5.6 millimeters. Technically not as thin as the M4 iPad Pros. It's kind of funny how that works. But the impressive thing about the iPhone Air is they basically were able to fit, you know, the front and rear facing cameras and the silicon and everything that kind of makes the phone think and process on the inside. All of that fits in that little skinny plateau at the very top of the phone. That kind of blew my mind when they showcased the teardowns on how basically the whole rest of that rectangle is just display and battery. Like, they don't even have speakers anymore on the bottom, which is kind of a potential deal breaker, I think, for a lot of people. There's only one speaker on the iPhone Air. Somewhere in the tech specs, they claim it's a stereo speaker, but it's just the earpiece. That's all that's left. This is the first time, I think, in Apple's history that they don't have speakers downward facing, you know, near the charge port at the bottom. There are still microphones down there and the Type-C charge port, which is still USB 2, by the way, despite this being a $1,000 phone. And that kind of makes it a hard sell. I think the iPhone Air is kind of Apple experimenting a little bit with just, let's make some models that may not necessarily sell that well, but just make for kind of a great demo experience. I think the iPhone Air will be very fun to pick up for the first time, hold it, throw it in your pocket, and you just think, wow, this is so lightweight, it's so futuristic, it's so thin, it's so cool. But I'm gonna spoil it for you right now. That feeling of it being futuristic and cool, that's not gonna last all that long, okay? Because Apple was already feeling weird enough about the iPhone Air's battery performance that they decided to bring back the MagSafe battery pack for $100 and very cleverly made sure that that battery pack only fits the iPhone Air because it's so tall. You literally cannot fit it on any other iPhone because every other iPhone has a much deeper camera bump, or excuse me, plateau at the top. So yeah, if you wanted that MagSafe battery pack to go on an iPhone Pro or an iPhone 17, it just straight up will not fit. That's kind of a crazy part about it, but for $100 you can boost the battery life of the iPhone Air by 65%, so it doesn't even give it a complete full charge, but probably makes the thickness pretty close to a regular iPhone. So now you've spent the same amount of money as a 17 Pro. That did get technically a little bit more expensive, but they've removed the 128 gig option, so I guess in a way it wasn't really a price hike, but it kind of is because they're forcing everybody to get 256 gigs now. But thankfully the iPhone Air does have a ProMotion display, just like its younger brother, the iPhone 17, and it gets plenty bright, so that's refreshing. But interestingly, I thought they were going to incorporate the C1 chip from the iPhone 16e. That's what all the rumors were saying, but as it turns out, Apple came up with a newer modem that is somehow faster and even more efficient than the C1, and I thought they were done with this terminology, but they're calling it the C1X chip, and that's what the iPhone Air has, not the regular C1. But keep in mind, the C1X still doesn't support millimeter wave, which is why the 17 Pro and Pro Max and the regular iPhone 17, none of those are rocking a C chip of any kind because they still want to have millimeter wave support, I guess. I don't think that's important. I'm a Mint Mobile user. I don't get millimeter wave regardless, but apparently the C1X chip is somehow better, even though it just came out like 6 months after the C1. And interestingly, they also introduced a new chip that is specifically for Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connectivity called the N1 chip, and I guess that's supposed to help with battery life as well, but I question how good it is or how confident Apple is in the N1 chip because, again, they didn't put that in any other iPhone. They just put it in the Air. They didn't put it in the 17 or 17 Pro. Kind of weird. Makes me question if they don't feel that confident about its performance, and I wonder if there's some like downsides to trying to compress all of the processing internals into that tiny little plateau at the top of the phone. But still, it is an engineering marvel, and I will confess the battery life on the iPhone Air, at least on paper, looks a lot better than I was expecting. Around 27 hours of video playback, which puts it about on par with the iPhone 16 Pro. So if you thought the regular 16 Pro had good battery life, then I guess it's the same on the Air. And I was not expecting them to go with the A19 Pro chip on the iPhone Air. I thought it would get the cheaper regular A19 chip. I don't know what the rumors were suggesting. I think they were going back and forth, but the biggest international problem I think with the iPhone Air is that it's eSIM only. We're kind of used to that in the United States because it's been that way for a while, but overseas there's still a lot of countries that are very much interested, and some of them downright dependent on physical SIM, and Apple basically said that the iPhone Air will be eSIM only everywhere. So that could impact sales pretty substantially, but you still can get a physical SIM on the rest of the iPhone 17s. But finally, they did something I think they should have done from the beginning when the iPhone 14 originally removed the physical SIM tray in the US. Now the eSIM iPhones get a bigger overall battery. So they take up that precious space that used to be the SIM tray with additional juice, which is like, why didn't you always do that? But now, I guess on the 17 Pros, it's at least looking like between websites you get about 2 hours more video playback when streaming with the eSIM model because it doesn't have that extra space on the inside. So I'm thankful that we're at least getting a battery advantage if we're going to go eSIM only. Feels much smarter than what they did with the 14 through the 16, where if you had eSIM, there was just a pointless hole in your iPhone that did nothing. And the last things I'll add about the new iPhones is, for one, wow, the 17 Pro Max exclusively, not on the regular Pro, actually goes up to 2 terabytes now, which is $2,000. Holy crap, that's insane, but get ready for folding iPhones next year. And also, Apple, what the heck are these clear cases? Like, this is so dumb. Absolute ridiculous design. The point of a clear case is to be clear. It's not to have the, like, giant white back that makes it look like you have a MagSafe battery when you don't, but that just makes no sense to me. And Oh, one more downside of the iPhone Air is no newer fast charging. So the iPhone Air peaks out at 20 watts, but that shouldn't really matter because it's a smaller overall capacity, so you'll still probably charge pretty quickly. But technically, if you want to go with an iPhone 17 regular or Pro, you're going to get 40 watt fast charging. So that's pretty cool. Aside from the iPhones, we got very nice upgrades for both the Apple Watches and AirPods Pro. Basically, they threw the S10 chip in the SE, so it's the same price as before, still aluminum and everything, but now it has an always-on display, which is really nice, and slightly faster charging than before. But the Apple Watch Series 11, actually, for the first time in Apple Watch history, only took them freaking 10 years to do this, they increased the battery life, okay? So this is not the Ultra, this is just the regular Apple Watch Series 11 with no price hikes. Now you can get up to 24 hours of use. It used to be 18, so that should be pretty noticeable. And while they talked about like sleep scores and blood pressure monitoring, it doesn't actually give you a blood pressure readout. It just alerts people, and this is not FDA approved, so they didn't sound too confident about it, but it just alerts you if you might have high blood pressure by analyzing your blood vessels. But that's not exactly what we were looking for. And the sleep score thing looks cool, but it turns out they once again are advertising it as if it's an Apple Watch Series 11 feature, but it's actually a watchOS feature. So the sleep score and sleep tracking thing is coming to the Series 10, Series 9, Series 8, 7, even down to the 6. But aside from that, yeah, they look pretty much the same. And then the Apple Watch Ultra 3 technically has the largest display of any Apple Watch. They're saying the bezels are a little thinner. I can't really tell, and it's kind of hard to find a section of the website that has a comparison. But technically, it's the largest display on an Apple Watch ever. It got 5G support along with the Series 11. I don't know why you need 5G on a watch, but now you have it. And you have direct to satellite text messaging capabilities like we all expected. But what's really cool is the Ultra 3 also got a battery life boost. So now they're expecting 42 hours of average use on a single charge, which is great. I'm sure even longer with power saver mode and all that. But AirPods Pro 3 were also a pleasant surprise. So apparently they've tweaked the design of both the ear tips and the pods themselves. They claim this fits more ears and they're more comfortable than before. And what matters to me more than the heart rate sensors, which were rumored for years, yes, they finally have them, is they actually boosted the battery life. So now on the pods, you get up to 8 hours on a single charge. It used to be 6, and that's while using active noise cancellation, which surprisingly enough, I didn't think there was going to be improvements here. They're saying the new ANC is twice as effective as AirPods Pro 2, which means 4 times as effective as AirPods Pro 1 for the same price as before. So that's a huge win in my book. No price hike with better ANC. It's still the H2 chip. I guess they didn't feel ready for a new version of that, but they did say they've tweaked the tweeters and the speakers themselves, so it should sound better. They're saying it's like better at picking up vocals and bass simultaneously. So there's a sound quality improvement, a battery life improvement for the same price, and they demoed this new live translation feature, which we've all seen Google and Samsung do a million times, where you can talk in real time with someone speaking a different language and it translates automatically. It's just a great overall update across the board. I'm sure you can find them on Amazon for half the price in like a month, but only downside is it appears they've shrunk the physical battery on the charge case itself, which is kind of interesting. So on the AirPods Pro 2, you got a total listening time of 30 hours with the charge case, and now on AirPods Pro 3, it's a total listening time of 24 hours. I don't know why they had to shrink the battery within the charge case. Maybe it helps save on cost, but overall, a pretty great upgrade, I think, for no price hike, and I was not expecting sound quality or active noise cancellation advantages, and we got both, which is fantastic. So that covers pretty much everything that was announced. I love the pacing, by the way. The whole event was done in under 75 minutes, so this was not even an hour and a half, and they didn't waste any time with Apple TV Plus trailers, and I think the regular iPhone 17 really just blew me out of the park with the 120 hertz and the 256 gigs of storage. I was really thinking with all of the great specs and all of the upgrades they were listing that, oh, there's got to be a price hike coming. And no, it just appears that the iPhone Air is kind of crazily priced, in my opinion, for what you're getting. $1,000 for USB 2, the slower charging, one camera. I don't know. How cool is it that it's thin? I feel like that novelty is going to wear off after like 2 days of using it. And the 17 Pros are pretty cool. I'm glad that they're better at thermal management. I'm glad there's lots of camera upgrades, but honestly, as far as expectations go, I think the iPhone 17 blew me away the most. The regular model is actually the coolest iPhone that came out today. I was not anticipating that. Feel free to let me know what your favorite and least favorite parts of today's announcements are down in the comments below. And thank you to everybody supporting this channel directly. It seriously helps us out a ton, as does just watching these videos. So thanks again. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you all in the next one.